Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 4 minutes past 6, I understand, despite what the clock behind us says. So if I can call the meeting to order, please. I think we... 1, 2, 3... So good evening and welcome to Council Cabinet this evening. We have apologies from Councillors Banwaite, Hussain, Raju and Repton this evening. Any others? No? Okay. Late items, there are none. Receipt of petitions, there are none. Identification of urgent items to which calling will not apply, there are none. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, none to that item as well. So if I can refer you please to the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of March. If Cabinet members are happy with those, they reflect the meeting accurately. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bolton. Those are agreed. Moving on then to item 7, recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board. Hopefully everyone has those as Appendix 2 and they should have been circulated, and we'll take those as is the normal practice as we review each item on the agenda. So we come then to key decisions and item 8, which is the school's capital programme. And Councillor Russell, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is an annual report detailing school's capital programme. As normal is the case these days, we haven't yet had full notification from the DFE of our confirmed schools condition maintenance allocation for this year, but we have estimated the sum based on information received and have allocated it in the ways detailed in the report. In order to make sure that we can do this work in a timely manner during the school holiday period, we need early agreement of these works, hence being contained in this report. Those works include works to Little Over Community School, Oakwood Junior School, Portway Junior School and Redwood Primary School. The details are in the report, so I don't wish to go through those. In addition, I would point out that we have had our confirmation of our basic need capital allocations. The recommendation in the report is to spend the allocation to provide an additional 300 secondary school places at the Cathedral School, and that is in addition to the 840 places that we've already agreed, and that is of course to meet our statutory responsibility to provide the required number of school places to children and young people in our city. So I would ask Cabinet to agree the recommendations as printed, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. I've got Councillor Holmes first.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick point to say it's very sensible and welcome to see the investment in Hackwood. I understand the mechanics of it, and the council will retrieve the money at a later date, but it's good news that the infrastructure such as the school is being built as how the first houses are being built. It's exactly what local councillors and local residents asked for, and it's very welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for those comments, Councillor Holmes. Any further questions or comments? No, okay. So we have the scrutiny recommendations, which on this occasion are just to note the report, which we will do. So if there are no more questions, if I can refer Cabinet members to recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 and ask to show your agreement for those, please. Okay, thank you. Those are accepted. And we move on to item 9, which is Property Improvement Capital Works Programme 1819, and that's Councillor Shanker, please.
Thank you, Chair. maintaining our property portfolio up to an acceptable standard for our employees who work in them, for our customers and visitors who rely upon them, is a key priority for this Cabinet and this Council. Just like the previous report, we could do with more funding in the key area as being outlined in the condition surveys that we are doing throughout the city. We have a robust plan in place in dealing with priority repairs and maintenance, and it's great that we're able to direct funding of over £25 million into our capital buildings programme for this forthcoming municipal year. I'm particularly pleased, as you may guess, that we're making a significant investment in our new swimming pool at Moorways, a key priority for this administration. We will have a world-class facility, the envy of the region, and I'm sure nationally as well, something we committed to do and we're moved at pace to deliver. Also, a significant investment is going to refurbish our market hall, which I know traders and residents will welcome. All these schemes have been approved earlier in the year at our budget setting meeting, but again, just putting this into context, this is a number of years now of government cuts that we've seen, but the decisions this Cabinet has made over a number of years is still allowing us to make significant investments in our city for our residents. I'm therefore delighted to make the 4 recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Shankar. I should have said before we began that we're referring to the revised report, which I think has been circulated. Hopefully everyone's got a copy of that. Okay, any questions or comments on this one then? No? Well, I think just to pick up on Councillor Shankar's comments, this Cabinet has made some very difficult decisions over recent years, caused by of course, the Conservative government's budget cuts that have affected all local authorities. But I think it is a measure of the prudent and competent decisions that this Cabinet's made, that we're now able to invest further sums into the city going forward. The new swimming pool, as Councillor Shankar's mentioned, and the market hall, and considering the national circumstances, I think we are in a pretty good position as a city, thanks to the decisions which have been tough, but I think have put us in a good position compared to many other authorities. When you look at places like Northamptonshire that have gone bankrupt, so I think it is down to my fellow Cabinet colleagues that have and officers that have got us to this position. So thank you, Councillor Shankar, for bringing the report and managing the finances in a way that allows us to continue to meet our 50 pledges, which this Labour administration is very proud of and will be taking forward. So if there's no comments from the opposition on those, we'll take comments from the Scrutiny Board, and the board resolved to note the report and to request in future that property improvement capital works programme was itemised in greater detail against specific projects, which I'm sure Councillor Shankar will accept, and if officers are able to do that for future reports, that would meet with the approval of scrutiny. Okay, so recommendations then 2.1 to 2.4 on the report. Can I ask Cabinet members to approve or revise those, please? So, yeah, that's agreed. Thank you. Item 10, Modern Slavery Victim Support Grant Award, and I'll hand over to Councillor Afzal.
Thank you, Chair. The Modern Slavery Partnership, Chair, was established with our partners to prevent modern slavery, combat human trafficking and support those who have fallen victim to what is a pernicious crime. In 2013, it was thought that there were 13,000 victims of slavery in the UK. Unfortunately, we now understand that this was a significant underestimation. Modern slavery is a serious and often hidden crime where innocent people are exploited for criminal and personal gain. It can have a lasting impact on the lives of victims who have been subject to deception, violence, threats, imprisonment, and often bonded with debt. For victims, recovery from such an ordeal, Chair, is not easy, and they deserve to be supported. In October 2017, the Home Office responded to lobbying from activists and announced a package of reforms for supporting victims. Derby City Council was invited to bid for funds to develop and deliver this support. Under the leadership of this authority, Chair, Derby has been at the forefront of responding to modern slavery, as we can see by the increasing number of victims accessing support, as well as our activity being recognised by the LGA and the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner. The pilot victim support project, Chair, we are here to agree tonight, once again, places the Modern Slavery Partnership and this authority on the national stage as innovators leading the way in the fight against slavery. The report we are considering requests approval to award funding of £100,000 to Jacob's Well, a local charity with a track record of delivering community support projects to vulnerable adults. They will support the Council by piloting a modern slavery victim support project. Funding has been secured through the Controlling Migration Fund with Jacob's Well as the named delivery partner. Approval of this award is therefore in line with the project description agreed by the Home Office in its award to the Council. I'd like to thank the Executive Scrutiny for its recommendations and welcome the referral of modern slavery to the Communities Review Board for further investigation. Together, we can continue to lead the way in tackling a crime that has no place in modern society. So I move recommendation 2.1 as printed in the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Afzal. It is a very sad state of affairs that we have to consider reports like this, and slavery, many of us would have considered until recent times something of a consign to the past, but it is very unfortunate that that this is returning and to manifest itself in different ways, but in a modern context. So to be able to contribute towards tackling this, I think, is absolutely the right thing for this authority to be doing. Can I ask if there are any other comments or questions relating to the report from opposition members or cabinet members? No, okay. Well, we have some recommendations from Scrutiny, and I'll perhaps ask the cabinet member or an officer to comment on these. The first one is that the expected outcomes detailed in the grant agreement were provided to Council Cabinet prior to making a decision on the award of funding. Secondly, to recommend to Council Cabinet that, subject to approval of the award of the grant, a health check was carried out on the financial and governance status of the named partner, and that modern slavery was added to the work programme for Communities Scrutiny Review Board for the 18-19 municipal year. So I don't know if Pop perhaps wants to say something on the scrutiny recommendations.
Right, thank you, Chair. Just taking those each in order. In terms of the grant agreement and expected outcomes, I've provided a copy to Democratic Services, and that will hopefully be circulated, and it will feature in the grant agreement. In brief, I won't go through it in detail, but in brief, the expected outcomes will be developed over the period of the project. It is a pilot, and we will test the best ways of supporting victims. What there will be is a number of minimum standards in terms of timescales for engaging with victims, certainly putting a timescale of a minimum 5 working days of arrival in the city to engage with victims, all victims to have individual support and care plans developed within 5 days of that meeting, and that will then form the ongoing monitoring of the project for the individual. There will be additional content within those support plans regarding identifying needs, strengths and skills. So it will be an asset-based assessment around their own individual needs and capabilities and what good looks like for them in their future. There will be quantitative measures in terms of access to education, ESOL, training, volunteering opportunities. So we will measure the numbers being referred through. As part of the victim journey and looking at a co-production approach to this, we will certainly be looking for, within the outcomes, a survivor's own assessment of the journey and change that they've been on, and that will form part of the evaluation on the service provided. And then other outcomes will be the number of survivors living independently in the community, a reduction in re-trafficking, because that is a critical one where we don't want victims falling foul of the perpetrators a second time. Numbers of victims are identified and referred, improved physical and emotional well-being, survivors feeling empowered, and ultimately survivors feeling safe in the community of Derby. So those outcomes will form part of the grant agreement. We're still awaiting the actual grant letter from the Home Office, and that will then feature as part of it. In terms of the second recommendation, the health check, this related to the current officers and executive of Jacobs Well. That was confirmed this morning that there are 4 standing officers within Jacobs Well occupying the positions, 4 people occupying 5 positions of a chair, company secretary, main contact, treasurer and partnership broker, and all of those are confirmed as listed on the Charity Commission's website. There's also been a quick check on the financial standing of Jacobs Well, and the accounts for the last 5 years up to 2016 have been filed. The 2017 accounts are not due in until September 2018, but we will monitor those. And I think a reassurance to Cabinet and Council is that the costings that go against the 100,000 are what the Home Office have approved, and that is what we will be monitoring on as expenditure against the actual project. In terms of the final recommendation, as Councillor Afzal has said, he welcomed the recommendation to take this programme to the Community Scrutiny Review Board, and that was confirmed this morning that it will be on their agenda for the coming year.
Okay, thanks very much, Bob. Any further questions then? Oh yes, Youth Mayor, please.
I just wanted to make a general comment. Today I decided to speak to some young people my age about the issue of modern slavery, and it just became very evident that not many young people really understood what it meant and what it involved. So I was thinking that maybe something this council could work towards would be continuing to educate young people about these arising issues, so that maybe in the future they'll be able to take actions like this council is to help victims of modern slavery and be able to continue the work that this council is doing at the moment.
Thank you. Yes, excellent contribution, and I'm sure that's something that the Cabinet member will want to take up in terms of working with young people and educating people to hopefully be able to spot some of the signs as well, and to be able to maybe help someone in that situation if they're in contact as well. So, yeah, a very good point, and I'm sure the Cabinet member will take that up. Okay, so subject to the reassurances that we've had from the officer in response to Scrutiny's comments, can I ask if Cabinet members are happy to approve recommendation 2.1 to award the grant of £100,000 to Jacobs Well charity from the Controlling Migration Fund? Is happy to do so? Yes, thank you very much. So that's approved. To item 11 next, which is compliance with contract and financial procedure rules, and Councillor Shanker.
Thank you again, Chair. So one of our routine Cabinet reports, there are 12 recommendations this month in this report. I'm particularly pleased to have included in the report a 2% pay award has been earmarked for our employees after years and years of a a pay freeze or 1% increase. This we included in our budget risk reserve, so we have earmarked funding to be able to pay that, and I'm sure some of our lower paid employees will really appreciate this. I wish we could have done more earlier, but obviously had been prevented by government to do so. This was all agreed and signed off yesterday, so it will be paid in this month's pay run. I'm also pleased to report the financial one-off benefit of around £6 million for this financial year from our successful business rates pooling bid with partners of the other 10 local authorities in Derbyshire. We will allocate this to our reserve at this stage and come back to Cabinet hopefully in June with further options on how we might use this funding to the best effect. Approval of this report tonight will also kickstart a further 2 exciting projects for this council. The first being the new performance venue, which you yourself have played a critical part in delivering, and also the £16 million or so of improvements to the Silk Mill Museum. I also note that the Scrutiny Board yesterday noted our report with no recommendations or further clarifications, and I hope that's down to the additional effort officers have put in to put additional detail as previously requested into this report. So hopefully we're at a stage now where we've got the right balance of information within the final financial matters report. So therefore, Chair, I'm happy to recommend the 12 recommendations as set out in paragraph 2 of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Shankar. Any comments, please, or questions? Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. Very much welcome the additional money in 4.3 for social care. Obviously, it will be used and very desperately needed. Moving on to 4.24, a procurement process for provision of a direct payment support service for adults. Really just wondered why this approach was taken, and not, do I understand correctly that then people will only have, well, they won't have a choice, there'll be one provider that they can go to for these services, or will they still have a choice? And I would have thought it might have been better to have more of a trusted trader approach, so that then people can still have a choice of organisation they go to, but still have the reassurance that that organisation has been checked out.
If we've got any answer to that from a Cabinet Member or an officer, please. Gamal, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of clarification, what this will be a procurement process which will then set up a brokerage system, and it will have a range of those services which are then procured sensibly and then available as direct payments. So it's putting it on a more sure and firmer footing.
Okay, Councillor Skelton.
Does that mean then that people will only, or not have the choice, they will just have to go to one provider, or can they still go where they choose?
Your Chair will need to take that back to seek clarification in terms of what it was specifically mean in terms of that level of detail.
Okay, well, we'll get an answer for you, Councillor Skelton, in terms of that question. Councillor Shankar.
Yeah, and just on 4.3, Chair, obviously we welcome the additional funding, but just to note, this is a one-off payment for 1 year only, so it doesn't really alleviate any longer-term shortfalls and pressures that we have in our ability to provide adequate social care. So although we welcome it, this is just a 1 year provision. I think the government should act and do more to be able to fund social care for us locally, but on a national level on a permanent basis.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? No. Scrutiny's comment was to note the report. So that covers Scrutiny's comments off. So if there's no more comments or questions, then I'll ask Cabinet members to approve recommendations 2.1 to 2.12. Please show everyone in favour of those. Yes, excellent. Thank you very much for that. So just before we close, I'd just like to welcome to his first meeting Glenn O'Connell, who's been sitting at the end of the desk there, who's the acting monitoring officer for the City Council. So we've not needed to call on Glenn's services this evening, but thank you, Glenn, for your attendance, and welcome to your first cabinet. I hope it's not been too much of a traumatic experience for you. Sure not. It's been a quiet one tonight, so Councillor Ames. So thank you, Glenn. And I'd also like to say to Tiny, who's our youth mayor for this year. I think it's your last meeting as youth mayor. I hope you've had a fantastic year in terms of everything that you've been involved in the council's activities, and thank you for all of your input and involvement. You've certainly asked very detailed questions to us cabinet members and put us on the spot on a number of occasions. So thank you for your input. I hope you've had a good year, and I think Voices in Action will be choosing a new youth mayor very shortly. They've already got somebody in post. Excellent. So we'll look forward to welcoming the youth mayor next year. Thank you. Okay, and with that, I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.